Hi, I'm Kevin Hogan, president of Rock Island Auction Company, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our upcoming August 25th, 26th, and 27th Premier Firearms Sale. I did not do a top 10 video last auction, so I'm happy and excited to be back. We're going to talk about some legendary and iconic guns, and we're going to talk about some legendary and iconic individual collections. So let's jump right into it. Number 10 on my list, and we'll start there. Now you may recognize this gun before because it was previously sold by our firm out of the Robert M. Lee collection. Both of these they're air guns, air pistols, air rifles, air carbines, however we want to phrase it. But this is a Parisian maker. It's by Boucheron. Again, this was sold by Rock Island Auction Company out of the Robert M. Lee collection. And listen, both these objects are on the table at number 10 on my list because of their aesthetic. They're just simply extraordinary art objects. And I remember seeing this gun for the first time and just being in awe and inspired by it because to me it evokes that, a Bellino engraving that you see made popular in the last 30 years. And this gun's well over 120 years old. And our still shots will capture it better. But the engraving, the execution is absolutely superb, as well as the technology, because these things were not easily made, easily engineered, easily put together. The execution on it, again, it's just absolutely exquisite. So that's why it's on my list. At the time, I thought it is or it isn't the finest air gun that we've ever handled. It's a privilege to have it back. Now, to my left, this is out of the Dr. Beeman collection, which we unveiled in our last premiere sale. We waited on this gun because, man, okay, so let's say you have the finest rifle and carbine, no doubt the finest pistol. Again, reservoir but it's gilt. This is by Hattersfield, which is obviously uniquely and distinctly an English name. And listen, there's not a lot of great information on this stuff, so I'm just trying to roll in the light so you can see the condition, and that's what this thing is. It's just it's an education in condition. The gilt reservoir butt, case hardened, engraved, Damascus barrel, polishing, original. This is one of Dr. Beeman's books. But if you want the best of what these things are, of what they represent, they're right here. Ladies and gentlemen, number 10 on my list, two absolutely exquisite, best of the best air guns you're ever going to see. Number 9 on my list, now you're going to see single guns, you're going to see 2 guns at a time, maybe 3 guns at a time, because this is very difficult to do. You're also going to see a bunch of different price points, and that's what we strive to do here because it's plain and simple. It's my top 10 and stuff I like, so you're also going to see a lot of 19th century American firearms, and this gun is special. I truly, truly believe that. I think we have it estimated in the catalog at $8,500 to $15,000. You'll also notice that we put it over 4 pages in the catalog because we have a responsibility to not only do the consigners justice, but do the guns justice as well. And I mean, we could have done 2 or 5 or 6 more pages on this gun for how I feel about it. But it's a Spencer 1882 pump shotgun. It was actually the first successful pump or slide action shotgun. And if you think about it, so they're responsible for that most universal and iconic "get off my lawn" sound. I don't know who thinks about it like that. I guess I do. But this is a different animal. This is what they called their Class A. And it might actually be a higher grade. It's definitely a one-off. Listen, this gun's done by Gustav Jung. And anybody who disagrees with me, I'll fight you because it's just as classic as it gets. And the scene is massive, right? Because the action's actually massive. But you have a beautiful deluxe wood, Damascus barrel, and then this unbelievable canvas for the master Gustav Jung to cut on, and it's just his classic scroll. And as classic as it is, you can stare at it forever. And so it's really not about the price point. It's about the object itself. And I love this gun. There's a few more on the list. Of course, there's a few more left off the list, but I think this thing's just absolutely wonderful. If it's a one-gun tour de force, if you want the best of something, here it is by 5,000 or 6,000 miles. Number 9 on my list, the Gustav Jung engraved Spencer 1882 shotgun. Number 8 on my list, I told you I was going to do some cheating because you're going to see 3 guns here. This is 25 years of primary issue U.S. military sidearms. And again, I didn't do a video last auction, so I didn't get the opportunity to gush on the Greg Lamp collection. I can't say enough great things about his collection, but what I really can't say enough great things about is the man. Had a really great time getting to know Mr. Lamp over the years and see his collection. Really, my definition of a great collector was Greg Lamp. The amount of study, passion that he put into his collection is unrivaled as far as I'm concerned by anybody, even in the field today. So we'll start with the gun from his collection, the Remington New Model Army. It was the second, most heavily used and issued primary weapon of the American Civil War on the Union side. 106,000 were purchased by the Ordnance Department, and as Mr. Lamp says it in his folder on this dossier on this, it's the best example that I can find. Now, when he said that, you can take it to the bank. You can write it in all capital letters and tattoo it on your arm, because that's exactly what it means. This is the best example that he could find. It's likely the finest example known. The cartouche is puckered. The polishing lines, I don't want to pick the gun up because we have it propped here, but the polishing lines, I could see it from here. They're spectacular. Just an as-issued gun, beautiful case hardening. You're just not going to find a better example. I'm going to leapfrog to my right-hand side here. To an artillery model, Colt single action artillery model, what a lot of collectors consider, the first real variation in the single action Army, of the approximately 17,000 that were redone by the Ordnance Department and issued for the Spanish-American War. They are tough, and you'll see mixed, you'll see them matched, different inspectors, different serial numbers. Now this gun is extra special, and spoiler alert, it's from about 6 miles from here, because this is the first Colt artillery known and done. Not my words; those are the words by author, expert, the best of the best, John Kopech. This was the model gun used to develop the 5.5-inch barrel, and again the holster that would need to be issued with the gun. This was the first one. It was delivered to the Rock Island Arsenal, and its condition is absolutely spectacular. Artilleries are tough because, like I mentioned, you'll see them in varying degrees of condition, and varying degrees of parts matching, parts not matching, inspectors matching, inspectors not matching. This is an all-matching gun. It's the first, and oh, by the way, it's absolutely brilliant for condition. Now, in the middle, and this is why this is in our top 10, we have a Lot 5 Ainsworth Colt Cavalry. As rare, as good, and iconic as they absolutely get, in that special range between 4,500 and 5,504. Those are the Lot 5 guns. These are the 7th Cavalry guns, or at least a large majority of these guns went to the 7th Cavalry. I've always been just a total student and infatuated by the Battle of Greasy Grass, the Battle of the Little Bighorn, whatever you want to call it. I've just finished a Terrible Glory for like the 3rd or 4th time. I love that book. It's by James Donovan, and that's just a plug for him. It's a wonderful book, but it's such a special moment in American history, and it'll live on forever and always. And here's a witness gun, a Lot 5 Ainsworth inspected with a Kopech gold seal, and Kopech talks about it. And this isn't ghost stories, but on the grips, when you examine the grips, he talks about it in his letter, which is, as far as I'm concerned, totally unprecedented. But he's talking about, when you look in the grips, you can see like kind of a TP carved into it and a 7th Cavalry cross sabers in the grip. You absolutely can. That's just what it is. Make of it what you want, but it's a true Lot 5 Ainsworth inspected cavalry. They're the pinnacle for U.S. Marshal single actions, as rare as they get. And what we like about this gun so much is that combination of condition where it's, yeah, we can still see the feathering on the front sight, but clearly this gun was used. Clearly this thing was a witness to the American West. Number 8 on our list, just 25 years of exceptional primary issue U.S. sidearms. Number 7 on my list, jewelry. I mean, truly, jewelry. Absolutely spectacular stuff here. And I might have highlighted it a few items back about the responsibility that comes with handling this stuff. And And that's what we have here. This is out of the George S. Lewis Jr. collection. And I loved the biography that was written on him that we put in the catalog, because it's not overcooked, it's not overdone, it's not 2,500 words, it's right to the point, and it's sincere, and it's as I knew Mr. Lewis, and had the privilege and the pleasure to see his collection in its natural environment and speak to the man and hang out with the man. And I remember meeting him at a Colt show when I was about 14. And then fast forward, 20 years later, sitting with him in his gun room and visiting with him and seeing his stuff. What an experience. And for me, that means more than the guns themselves. And we can reach back and touch these legends because he did as well. Because when George started collecting, he collected for 65 years. So he's reaching back to those people that we read about in books, R.Q. Sutherland, Bill Locke, and a couple of these guns come from those collections. But to think about, it's a way that we can visit the past and be with the past. But these are examples of spectacular new lines out of Mr. Lewis's collection, and there's plenty of other Derringers in the sale. I wanted to highlight just a few of them, and it's interesting because I get to sit here. You look at different views that you might not like sit and stare at on these guns when you're sitting behind them and light's hitting them from different directions. But again, 3 variations of new lines. The one on my right, again, I said jewelry right when we started. It's one of these pound for pound guns. They punch way above its weight class for condition, rarity, beauty. It's all there. It's kind of one of those things that what I say is like a pound for pound. It'll never bring enough money to justify how great it is in the field where it ranks amongst other things, but just a spectacular example. And then on my left is a 32 caliber new line, and these are Helfrich engraved in that 1876 Centennial pinwheel vein. Just beautiful examples of Helfrich's engraving and the treatment, right? Because his use of space, actually, like the space that he didn't use is what's really interesting when you really get to study Helfrich's stuff. But gilt cylinder, ivory grips, Helfrich engraved, just beautiful. But kind of the cornerstone of this new line group is at the center here. Again, Helfrich engraved, gold cylinder, incised factory pearl grips. Now this gun's noted in the R.Q. Sutherland collection written by Frank Sellers, who is also just a wonderful guy and worked for us for many years, one of my mentors. And he wrote the R.Q. Sutherland book, the Book of Colt Firearms, in which he notes that this was a presentation by Annie Oakley to an Anita Mitchell. And there's no documentation that we have with this gun. It goes back to Sellers' reference of Anita Mitchell from the lot collection. But we did do some digging. We found a Jim Mitchell that was with Annie Oakley, that was with Buffalo Bill's show for quite some time. So we know it makes total sense. But the gun in and of itself, for rarity, for condition, it stands on its own. Again, in a beautiful Moroccan leather wrapped factory case. Again, with the incised grips. I'm just looking. I'll just turn it here, and I just see this little, pineapple splash that we always associate with Helfrich. Let me flip the gun over too, and I'll show you this clamshell over on the other side that you always associate with Helfrich on the side here. 3 wonderful guns from a legendary collection, the George S. Lewis Jr. collection, number 7 on our list. Number 6 on the list, just a couple of spectacular Colts. Kind of a theme here, no doubt. Start on my right, and we've looked at a lot of Colt single actions, a lot of factory engraved Colt single actions, and I always think, the biggest difference between experience and knowledge and seeing stuff and reading stuff and handling stuff is separating, the difference between a 95% gun and a 100% gun, or a 99% gun, a mint gun, which we really strive to not use. But that's what you have here with this 5.5-inch Glon engraved single action. It's a 354,000 range gun. It was shipped to Camp Perry in 1931, and it is outrageously good for condition. Now this is a Class C gun, so that's Colt's highest level of embellishment. We talked about the Spencer early on. That was, Spencer called it an A grade. So it gets confusing between the different manufacturers bouncing between their engraving grades. So the highest engraving grade for a Colt was C, which is full coverage or nearly full coverage. And that's what you have here. 80% of this gun's engraved and 99% of the finish is there. And it letters to an absolute T with the carved ivory steerhead grips. I'm not going to pick it up. I think our close-ups and everything else will speak to it rather than me rolling the gun around. But it's as good as a factory engraved single action as you're going to see. It's not a black powder gun, but for a Glon engraved 5.5 inch, and to me that's like the ultimate combination is blue, case hardening, ivory. That's as handsome as it's going to get, and they're tough. But to see one that's 99%, that's got a little bit of history. One gun shipment to Camp Perry. It actually went to Camp Perry twice. It was sold a year later in 1932. A beast of a first generation factory engraved, C engraved Colt single action. To my left, it's kind of cool too. So we did the Helfrich stuff with Mr. Lewis's collection. Now we got to see Glon, and now we'll go to Goff. And you want to talk about rare. So we have a service model Ace. All right. And this is the beautiful thing about this. We can quantify, we can qualify how rare is this. Same thing with the single actions, as we know. But on the service model Ace, they did 13,800 service model Aces, of which 8 were factory engraved. Okay, pretty rarefied air. Absolutely. And oh, by the way, it's also like 99%, 98, 99% brand new. Now, take it a step further with the 45 conversion, which they did, and don't crucify me if I'm off by 4 or 5 numbers, they did 112 conversion units, of which 3 are factory engraved. So this is as rare as something gets. Now, the documentation that accompanies this gun is also wonderful. So at factory letters, everything I just said, factory letters, shipped to Abercrombie & Fitch, New York, 1938. And now we have a copy of the affidavit from the gentleman who happened to be a Brigadier General John Richardson, who purchased the gun from Abercrombie & Fitch in 1939, who took it overseas during the war from like 41 to 43 or 42 to 44. Says he didn't use it or holster it or wear it, and he says that in the letter, but he was the original purchaser. It gets purchased by noted Colt dealer collector Mike McHugh. It's on display at the Cody Museum, that is sold subsequently to our current consignor. So, but to go back to the gentleman who originally purchased the gun, he brought it over during the war, 1942, 1943. Again, it's just like you're checking these boxes, and I think kind of both of these possess those, different histories that make them great in and of themselves, but the condition is what sets them apart. The condition is what puts them number 6 on my list. Number 5 on my list, let's talk about some Winchesters. Took me a little bit to get to some Winchesters. Number 5 on the list. And I'm super cheating on this one because I don't really have one that I want to say, hey, this is the one. I just want to talk about some absolute stellar condition and some rarity because that's what we have here. So I'll just work front to back. 1890, 22 short, case hardened, and benchmark. Now we use that term because we like it and it makes sense. And as it applies by definition, it's a standard of excellence against which similar things should be judged. And that's what you have here with these guns. So the 1890, it's a benchmark example. It's rare. It's 22 short. It's case hardened. And I'm going to say this kind of with all these guns. You can feel it with your eyes. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. But the wood to metal fit, the butt plate, where it meets, you can feel these guns with your eyes just looking at them. They are great in all capital letters. The gun in the middle, this is Greg Lamp gun. No big surprise how good it is and how rare it is. So you have a 20-inch 1873 short rifle. Again, it's a 20-inch gun. And again, you can feel it with your eyes. You can feel that wood to metal fit. If you're selling it, you're going to call it a 98%. And if you're buying it, you're going to call it a 96%. So it is all there for what it is. Super, super, super rare. And I think cool. And I think that's a fair assessment of like some of these guns is that they have an extreme cool factor. And this, a 20-inch short rifle with all the skin on it, a truck gun, y'all. That's as good as it's going to get for what it is. The best one we've seen, just mint, hang it on the wall, love it, enjoy it. It's the best. Behind it, Winchester 1894, it's antique, it's a second-year production, so it's a 1895 production. It has the 10 o'clock screw, which you can see over here. I'm trying to tell time backwards and upside down and on a gun, but the 10 o'clock screw is the, what you look for in a true first model. Winchester 1894, which are rare in and of themselves because they are, the most heavily produced lever action rifle ever. And again, I'll say it, you can feel it with your eyes. I'm looking at the butt plate here, 95% original case hardening. The wood to metal fit is spectacular. It's benchmark. These are the best that you're going to be able to find. Given any amount of time, study, or scholarship, it would be pure luck to find anything that's better, and you're talking a degree of 0.5% or 1%. So number 5 on my list, just a trio of benchmark Winchesters. Number 4 on my list, we're going to talk about the Greg Lamp collection. We're going to talk about a Colt Patterson. And every time I talk about a Colt Patterson or a Colt Walker, I always say, anytime you have an opportunity to see one, you need to see one because they are so rare. They are so important to this hobby, especially if you're a 19th century American firearms collector. Colt Pattersons are the pinnacle. Walkers are the pinnacle for percussion Colts. That is, they sit atop. And I can gush on Mr. Lamp all day for his collection. So this is Mr. Lamp's Patterson number 2. This is a second variation. We actually sold his first variation, his number 1 Patterson, which was number 404, about 3 or 4 years ago. It brought almost $600,000 at auction, and it's in the same vein. It's spectacular. So, Pattersons with any original finish are elite, but ones that are in 90 plus are the best of the best, and that's what you have here with this serial number 166. Again, the number 2, and the one thing you'll note with Mr. Lamp stuff is meticulous on the accessories, and you can see all the gilt on the Charger, and it's got that wallpaper line case with the lines in it, and I mean you see a little bit of loss of the finish on the recoil shield, which is just enough to keep it honest. So for a number 2 Colt Patterson, without fear of contradiction, the best one that we've ever handled and sold by a long shot for condition and for rarity. Now, this gun was discovered in 1960, 1962 by another legend, Herb Glass Sr. He offered it to Philip R. Phillips, who wrote the original book on Colt Pattersons and their variations. He offered it to him for sale. He did not purchase it. And then the gun was purchased by Mr. Lamp and put away. This thing's been gone. So here it is, number 4 on my list, Greg Lamp's spectacular number 2 Colt Patterson. Number 3 on the list, I told you we're going to talk about some iconic guns, and we're going to finish here in a flurry from iconic collections. Number 3 on my list is the really famous, exceptional, gilt-strapped 51 Navy, factory engraved by Thomas J. Barlow. Now, in percussion Colt collecting, in the discipline of factory engraved percussion Colt collecting, you see a lot of factory engraved 49 pockets. You see a lot of factory engraved 51 Navy. So that's going to be your most, common model and the most uncommon engraving. Now, and that's where you can be discriminating as a collector. I'm going to hold out for an exceptional example of a 49 pocket. I am going to hold out for an exceptional example of a 51. And there is more variation that you'll find in the 51s. Hey, maybe I want a really, really early first model 51 wedge over screw squareback. Of course, there's several factory engraved squarebacks that are worth owning at the highest level. And this is probably the rarest of those variations. It's got the gilt straps. And I think there's a note saying, maybe there's 2 or 3 knowns. The only one that I'm aware of, or I think is published and well published. And that's what makes it an icon, because it's published in Bill Locke's book, the Book of Colt Engraving. I think the Peacemaker book by Wilson. It's an extremely well published gun, but it's in great company because it's been a part of the Locke collection. It's been a part of the Dr. Paul McCombs collection, the Dr. Joseph Murphy collection, and it comes to us via the Greg Lamp collection. And so listen, if it's worthy of any of those gentlemen, let alone all of those gentlemen, it's definitely worthy for your collection. And the reason it's so sought after, the reason it's so prized, because it's early. It's at 5605 serial number, but it's the gilt straps. Beautiful, beautiful gilt straps, burl walnut grips. It's very special for what it is. Typically in Colt collecting, actually, let me rephrase that. Typically in 19th century American arms collecting, we say gold is good, and I always say the easiest stuff's the best stuff, or the best stuff's the easiest stuff, because it slaps you in the face, and that's exactly what this 51 does. It's early. It's Barlow engraved, so it's super early, and you don't see a ton of his work. It's got the gilt straps, the burl walnut grips. It's extremely well published, extremely well pedigreed. Obviously, that's what makes number 3 on my list. 2 for 2. Number 2 on my list is a pair of exceptional Winchesters. So we did the other 3, I think, as number 5 on the list. And there's something to be said about mint standard grade Winchesters. They get my goat. They really do, because, most of these, they were used. They were handed down. They were shot. They are exposed to extremely, harsh conditions, or maybe they were stored improperly for a period of time. So, it takes a rare series of circumstances for rare guns to survive, let alone in any condition. And that's what you have here, which is why I put them as number 2 on my list, because you might say, hey, fairly common. Up front is a deluxe takedown Winchester 1892. I cannot stress enough how rare deluxe 92s are. They are so few and far between. If you do not think that is the case, I challenge you, go find them. Go look them up. Go try to pull comps on the internet. Go back through Mattis's book. Go find deluxe Winchester 1892s, let alone with condition. This is a takedown example, so it's special order. They do not exist, especially in condition. So I can say without fear of contradiction again, this is the finest deluxe Winchester 1892 that we've ever had the opportunity or privilege to handle. And I said it with the last, you can see both of these guns with your eyes. You can feel them with your eyes. And that's important. The wood to metal fit, the case hardened on the butt plate, it's all there. That gun is so tough to find. And then right behind it, it's a same tail of the tape here. Winchester 1876, the Centennial model. Find them in condition. This is not a deluxe gun. I would say it's like a 1X wood, but again, the most important part is you can feel this gun with your eyes. A wood to metal fit like a Purdy or a Holland, and the condition is outrageously good. So 76s in and of themselves are very difficult in condition, especially the case hardened guns, right? Most of them you see are silvered out, or they have some flashes of case hardening. But for 76s, just a quote-unquote standard grade, again, I would say it's like a 1X wood, but this is the best 76 that you're going to see this year. That's a standard grade 76. It is absolutely out of this world for condition, as good as they get. So for what these guns are, they are the best of the best. Obviously, we're partial to lever guns. I'm partial to lever guns, 19th century American stuff. These 2 Winchesters are so scarce, and they're so good. It's why I moved them all the way up to number 2 on my list. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1 on my list. I'm a broken record. So here, I picked the number 1 gun because it's always easiest. To me, I know my pick for the auction, and then I work my list. I pick the best guns I can, then you try to rank them, which is tough. I knew these guns would be one on my list the second we started talking about the opportunity to sell Mr. Lamp's collection. I have to tell you, this is what I live for, which is handling the best of the best when it comes to 19th century American firearms. That was a goal I had for myself, given the opportunity that I had to work with my father and work with people like Richard. The opportunity to handle the best of the best, the Mona Lisas of our world, the Mickey Mantle rookie cards of our world, and that is exactly what is sitting before me. I always say the famous guns with a nickname, guns steeped in history, steeped in tradition, steeped in legacy, and that's what the Parsons guns are. Call them the Parsons guns, you call them the Parsons armies. they are mentioned in the same vein amongst the other great percussion Colts of their era and of their time. The Anderson guns, the Milliken Dragoon, the McPherson, the Cox Navy, the McClatchy Root, and on and on and on and on. Very, very, very few guns live up to the hype. Very few guns deserve to be talked about like that. And they're just an absolute pleasure to be around. And listen, they're important for a reason. And we did a wonderful video on the history of Parsons. I'm not going to get into that other than say the mover of armies, probably one of the most underrated heroes of the American Civil War, and uncelebrated, unknown. We're in a logistics-driven world, and it was no different back then. It was obviously harder, and you could make the case that he won the war, certainly helped win the war, given what he was able to do. But this guy, these are special for me because they were discovered by Bill Sisney, and I don't know if some of you some of you guys probably know Mr. Sisney really well. Other of you have never heard the name. For us here at Rock Island, for me personally, he was an icon. He was a legend, and I was blessed and had the privilege to share a dinner table with him countless times and hear the stories that he had to tell because he was funny. He lived 1,000 lifetimes, but he had done so much, and he talked about the Parsons gun with the twinkle in his eye. These were the best guns that he found, that he got to tag his name to, that he handled. He discovered them in Parsons College in Iowa, so just right down the road from us on Interstate 80, 150 miles. And I got to hear the story. He traded the dean of the college. I believe it was like an L.C. Smith shotgun and a few $100 for these guns, and one of them, when they were discovered, had a ring in the barrel, and that was fixed immediately, and it should have been. It needed to be. And I always say, yeah, but these things are epic. And from Bill Sisney, he sold them to George Lewis. Now, you heard us talk about George Lewis, number 7 on our video. You talk about an icon. These were the best guns that George Lewis owned, and I heard that out of his own mouth. They were, it's a pair of deluxe factory engraved 1860 Armies. If this doesn't get your blood up, you need to do something else. And he had them for 25, 30 years until he sold them to Greg Lamb. Talk about a legend. Talk about an icon. That's what I told you, we were going to come full circle on all this stuff. We're going to talk about iconic guns and legendary collections, and that's what we have. So he sold them to Greg Lamb. So we are offering one of these icons, the Parsons Armies, for sale for the first time publicly, and that means a lot. It means a lot to Rock Island Auction Company to have that ability, to have that responsibility to take these to the market publicly for the first time, because they are so rare and because they are so great, and because of who they touch and who they belong to. So I'll tell you, it's a hell of a thing. It really is a hell of a thing sitting here, being the auction company that gets to do this and market it and be around them. It's just, they're an absolute pleasure. So what we have is a true pair, and I'm not gonna pick them up because, like I said, I always said, like, the pictures will do it justice better than we can. But they're deluxe engraved in every sense of the word. Outside of gold inlaying, the most deluxe treatment that you're gonna see on percussion Colts is the factory cross hatching on the loading lever. That is deluxe treatment. So when you hear deluxe, that is what my mind always goes to, is the cross hatching on the loading lever, because you think how difficult that is to do on case hardening, just for how dense and hard that is. And then it's the hand engraved cylinder scene. So those are kind of I guess the two. But again, outside of gold inlaying, that engraving on the loading lever is as rare as it gets. But the hand cut cylinder too, that's what elevates it. And then, oh, by the way, they're factory engraved 1860 Armies, and as we all know, the fact that the 1860 Army was the most popular and issued sidearm of the American Civil War. So you don't see a ton of factory engraved 1860 Armies. They are few and far between. And you have that transition period, 1862, 1863, and after, we call like the post-war, that Vine scroll And this is Gustav Jung at his best. Deluxe, tight, rich, beautiful, bold scrolls that you see from muzzle all the way down the back strap. Wolf's head hammer, dots on the hammer, just beasts for what they are as art objects for students of engraved 19th century Colts. They are an epic. And again, it goes without saying, number one on my list, the Parsons Armies. Come see them for yourself, and all this other great stuff. I can't tell you how hard this task is to pick your top 10, because for every one there's 100 left off, and that's just the damn truth of it all. Guys, we can't encourage you enough to come to our auction. So this is our 30th year in business. We're celebrating that. This is also likely going to be our last auction in Illinois for our premier sales. We are moving to Texas for our premier auctions now and in the future, starting in December of 2023. So this is going to be our last premier auction at our Illinois location in December. Look for us down in Bedford, Texas, and there's going to be a lot more news coming out about that. So come see us for one more premier auction in Illinois. See all this great stuff August 25th, 26th, and 27th. Looking forward to seeing everybody there.